Welcome to Money Matters on TV 360. I am Adeshewa Udushoga. Controversy continues to deepen as the world's two largest economies, China and the United States of America, go tough in their trade war. The war started when the Trump administration levied a $37 billion tariff on Chinese products and threatened to expand the measures to cover all $504 billion in the U.S. imports from China. This is in a bid to check China's growing global economic power. The Chinese products, which include flat-screen television sets, steel and aluminium, aircraft parts, among others, will also suffer a 25% border tax when they are imported into the U.S. Now, the implication of this tariff is that the Chinese products which are imported into the United States will be very expensive for consumers to purchase, and this will compel American citizens to seek other alternatives in other countries. This is visibly a loss for China. But China didn't take things lying low at all and has been giving it back to the U.S. It also levied a 25% tariff on $34 billion worth of U.S. goods. This tit-for-tat action is definitely escalating the trade war, but beyond China and the United States, could this trade war between these two economic giants have ripple effects in other places? Perhaps so. Now, when you consider the fact that both the U.S. and China are key trading partners of Nigeria, then it might not be out of place to imagine the trade disputes could have repercussions here in Nigeria. Well, in an interview with the Director General of Lagos Chamber of Commerce, Muda Yusuf, he highlighted the positive impact this trade war may have on Nigeria.
The trade war has some very significant effects on the global economy. Because the U.S. economy is the biggest economy in the world. It has a GDP of slightly over 20 trillion US dollars. The Chinese economy is the second largest economy, the GDP of 14 trillion US dollars. So when you have issues with two major or two leading economies globally, certainly it will have a global effect. It's going to have some effect on the global economic growth. It's going to slow down the tempo of growth generally, globally. And once you have that kind of moderation in the tempo of global economic activities, it has a way of affecting other key global variables, for instance, commodity prices. If the trend continues, we are likely to see some drop in commodity prices. And for economies that depend a lot on commodity prices like Nigeria, invariably it will have some very significant implications for an economy such as ours because of our dependence on revenues from commodities. Secondly, there is what you call the investment effect. China is a major hub for many exporters globally, especially exporters to United States. We have investors from all over the world going to China to set up. With the current development and the current tariff, we are likely to see a migration or relocation of such investments from China to other countries. So if we're able to position ourselves, for instance, in Nigeria or any other country that's able to position itself properly, could be a destination for such investment that are likely to be, likely to relocate from China to other economies. There is also the currency effect. Already, the Chinese currency is weakening because of this trade war. And the implication of that is that it will now be cheaper to import from China because of the weakening of their currency. So that is an advantage to countries that import from China. For instance, in Nigeria, we do a lot of import from China. Similar thing is happening even with Turkey. Turkish currency has, weakened by almost 30% because of this trade war. Because as the trade war hits these two economies, their export declines. And once your export drops, your currency is likely to weaken. So weakening of the currency is to the advantage of some of us that import a lot from China. So those are the three key dimensions of impact. There's the global dimension in terms of the global economic growth, there's the investment dimension, and there's the currency dimension.
According to the Peter Navarro's theory, which seems to be the basis for the United States trade policy against China, it says that China is trying to take over technological power from America. How true is this?
Well, China is taking over a lot of things because of their competitiveness. They have used their currency as a major strategy. They have more impact in the global economy in terms of their penetration of other economies. They are also very close to economies, many emerging economies. They have a lot of footprints on the African continent, more than the United States. So generally, both from the economic point of view and from even the diplomatic point of view, a lot of economic diplomacy is taking place, driven by the way China does its things and the kind of concession in terms of funding and things that the Chinese government gives to different countries of the world. It's giving them a lot of influence. And there is this Belt and Road initiative by the Chinese economy. It's a major initiative to support a lot of economies around the world. So that again is expanding the frontiers of influence of China. So it is true that the Chinese economy, or China itself, is having a lot growing influence around the world.
According to reports, the United States says that it imports more of manufactured goods from different countries, and this is bringing a loss in manufacturing jobs in the country. Should this be a reason why it should levy a tariff on Chinese products, or should China be blamed for this?
No, the impact of Chinese trade is much more than the impact of any other trade in the United States. And the same is true of many other countries, even in Nigeria and many other African economies. If you talk to the average manufacturer, their major concern is about imports from China because they are more competitive, they are cheaper, and all of that. So in terms of the strength of competitiveness, China has advantage over many other countries in the world, including the United States of America. So the core competence or the comparative advantage or competitive advantage of the United States is no longer in manufacturing, especially many of these consumer products and things like that. Their core competence or core comparative advantage is more in the high-end, high-tech products rather than the normal consumer products. China has clear advantage in those areas. So unless there is the kind of tariff that the United States has imposed on them, I mean, there's no way they can compete with Chinese products.
This trade war seems to be unending as both countries have been giving its teeth for tat since July, and this is August. What's the economic implication if this trade war doesn't end?
Well, the future implication is that if they continue to have great uncertainties in the global economy, it may eventually slow down the growth in the global economy. The citizens in both countries, both in China and the United States, will also pay for it. Because in this kind of war, there are actually no clear winners. Everybody is a loser when you have this kind of trade war. And that is what will eventually happen. And knowing Trump for what it is, for as long as this is his regime and for as long as he's in power, I don't see this changing because he has a very strong business mindset, not so much an economic mindset to the issue of trade. And that is what he has brought into governance. So the situation is likely to continue for as long as Trump is in government. And it's likely to even spread even beyond China. You know, he has already taken some action against Turkey. An action has been taken against Rwanda based on textiles and things like that. When our president went to the United States, he also cautioned our own president, President Buhari, that we need to review some of our tariffs against some of their products coming from the United States, especially wheat. We import a lot of wheat from the United States, and both the levy and the tariff on wheat is almost 30%. So he also sent a subtle message to us in Nigeria that we also should do something about the tariff on the products that are coming from the United States. So it's likely to continue to go around a lot more countries.
Now let's come down to Nigeria. United States and China seems to be the key trading partners of Nigeria. What's the economic implication of this trade war in Nigeria?
Well, there are benefits and there are costs. The first benefit I see in it is the fact that the Chinese currency is getting weaker. And once the currency of your exporting country is getting weaker, it's an advantage to the importing country. So that means the average dollar we use to import from China will give us more value than before. That's an advantage. A possible advantage is if you're able to create the environment for the relocation of some investment from China to Nigeria. Nigeria doesn't have any, it's not attracting any sanction or tariff imposition from the United States for now. So it is easy to export from Nigeria to the United States to fill some of the gaps that have been created by the sanction. So first, there may be relocation of investors. If we create the environment, investors can come here, set up, and export to the United States. Then there is also the opportunities for Nigerian exporters to the United States, because already the tariff, both on the Chinese products and on the Turkish products, we create some gaps in the United States in terms of supply. Prices will go up, and that could create an opportunity for us in Nigeria, for those exporters that are smart enough to do a kind of replacement of the exports that normally should have come either from Turkey or from China. But the flip side is the likely effect on the global economy. If there's a slowdown in the global economy, it is likely to affect commodity prices. It could affect oil prices, and when oil prices begin to drop, then it will affect us. It will affect us macroeconomically. It will affect our foreign reserves. It will affect our exchange rates, and that has a lot of transmission effect in terms of prices and welfare. So those are the dimensions of the impact that is likely to have on Nigeria.
Welcome back. Moving over to the agricultural sector now, Nigeria is losing about 3.6 trillion naira to exporting agricultural commodities as a result of lack of operational and investment opportunities. Well, this is according to a recent report obtained from a forum on agro-air logistics in Abuja. There is also a visible operational and investment gap between the agro-perishable industry and the aviation sector. It's okay to say both sectors have their own differences and challenges facing them, which could possibly put a gap in between the two. But talking of bad transportation network, poor access to international markets, problem of power, among other things that has become an issue in the agricultural sector. The aviation sector, on the other hand, have had to suffer from a discontinued previous air cargo project by the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, as well as a non-expansion of the air cargo April of the Muritala Mohammed International Airport project, currently abandoned. Now the question is, how did we arrive at so much loss? Reacting to this, I spoke with the CEO of Starling Global and Ideal Limited, Muritado Adeniji, and here is what he had to say.
Maybe it's underrated, maybe it can be more than that, because when you look at it in terms of money, maybe 3.6 million. But when you look at it in terms of opportunity lost, it may be more than that. In recent years, in the last 12 months, the Apapa Road has been in trouble. That's Apapa, also the Express, the Port Road. And that's the only port in Nigeria. Agricultural commodities are perishable. So it became very difficult for people to take their produce across the shore of Nigeria through the port. So there is a monumental loss to the producers, to the farmers, to the traders. So the entire value chain is in crisis seriously now because these things are perishable, you cannot go through the port on time. Then the value, the quality reduces, meaning that the value of these products or produces are also reduced. Then we had competitive advantage in some of these produce in the past, but now we don't have again because the processors everywhere in the world, the developed nations that uses these agricultural produce as source of their raw materials, they are looking for other countries where they don't have problem to source all their products. So that means in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, Nigeria will not be a very important origin for this of some of these produce again. So you can see that it's not just in terms of what you can calculate that they have lost. We have lost the business itself.
From what you've said, you said some other countries are beginning to find alternative countries to trade with, since Nigeria is no longer meeting up to their standards. Wouldn't this be a loss for Nigeria?
Oh yeah, very seriously. We are talking about competitive advantage. Where we had competitive advantage in the past, surprisingly for you, Nigeria used to be the third largest producer of cocoa in the world. But in the last 3 years, we became number 7. So that is one of the areas where we are losing our competitive advantage. The other countries are taking advantage because if you cannot export your produce on time, the quality where you have the advantage is becoming what every other nation can produce. Then they will look at other countries. Let me give you an example. IFC, International Finance Corporation, used to support producers, farmers in all West African countries. But Nigeria, for so many years, they stopped because of our peculiar problem. They invested heavily in Cote d'Ivoire, and the cocoa production in Cote d'Ivoire jumped from 1.2 million tons to 2 million tons in 2016 because of the support. So Nigeria lost that advantage. Do you understand? So definitely it's going to be it's a chain of problem. It's a chain of losses to the farmers, to the country itself, the repatriated fund that we are supposed to use, and that's why you have the CBN every day bringing money from oil to support the forex market. It shouldn't be. Our export, there's always what we call balance of trade deficit or surplus. It should be in surplus because we are producers of these very important agricultural commodities. Nigeria produces more than 100 different types of agricultural commodities that are exportable. They are in high demand in China, in Asia, in other Asian countries, in Europe, in America. But unfortunately, because of our peculiar problems, we have lost that to other countries.
Amidst all these problems, do you think Nigeria should resolve to exporting agricultural commodities by air?
Yeah, it should solve the problem, but we have to look at the cost. Nigeria is the only country where government doesn't give any incentive. It will be funny for you to understand that Vietnam started processing cashew in 1990, and today they are the largest processors of cashew in the world. Nigeria started in 1953. Today we only process 7% of the total cashew produced in Nigeria. They took the advantage, we did not. But what was the advantage? They gave them incentive. The government gave them incentives. So they decided they had the opportunity to export kernels to America, to Europe. Today, no American company wants to come to Nigeria to import kernels because they believe we are not good enough. Now it has developed their technology. It's not only that it has developed their trade, it has also developed their technology. Today, Vietnam produces phones. They produce machineries which they use to crack the kernels. Then they have roasters. They roast the cashew nuts, and they are now exporters of finished products to America and Europe. Today, no American company wants to buy cashew nuts, cashew kernels from Nigeria. They would rather go through some supermarkets in Dubai to buy it, but they will go directly to Vietnam and India to import. So if you now use the air freight, it's too expensive. There was a time I tried to ship my cocoa through DHL because they can airlift them. But the cost of shipping, taking 1 ton of cocoa to Europe is equal to the cost of buying it in Nigeria. So it doesn't make sense. Except when, of course, if the freight is cheaper and the time taken and the resultant benefit in it will match the trouble. So the cost is not going to make it work. If it works, it will have been a good one. But definitely it's not going to because of the cost.
Now, the report also says that there is an operational and investment gap between the aviation sector and the agricultural sector. How can we bridge this gap?
The need to produce, a refrigerating system where perishable items can be stored in different locations and can be lifted and at a reasonable cost. Cost can only be reduced in terms of the volume. If the volume of export increases, then it's possible that the cost will reduce and people will be encouraged to go through the air freight. Then two, is technological. The entire world is changing. We should develop technologies, encourage people that bring in a lot of opportunities where there will be technological advancement on how to store these perishable items at very low cost, minimal cost. Do we even have electricity in Nigeria? And this is one of the very important ingredients of storage. So these things need to be fixed. That's why I said there are a lot of infrastructural deficiencies in this country that the government should look at. We cannot play politics with it. The population is increasing, and unfortunately, the gap between the youth and the old, the population of the youth is huge. So it can be turned into an advantage or a disadvantage if the government is not careful.
Having always to wait for the government intervention in almost everything seems like mission impossible. How do you think private stakeholders can come in now?
Private business owners will be willing, but the government needs to provide the enabling environment. If your roads are not good and you want somebody who will pay for his own electricity, who is going to also construct the road, then the cost of doing business in Nigeria is too high. So the government needs to provide the enabling environment first, then it will encourage private owners. Every private business owner wants to make profit. You don't want to come here and lose money. And in about 4 or 5 years ago, we learned that so many companies were moving from Nigeria to Ghana. Why? Because of electricity. And I am very sure so many companies will have moved out of Nigeria because of the bad road. Because if you cannot do your business, you are an export-dependent company, and you cannot export through the Nigerian ports, what do? And if some people get frustrated when you lose money, then they get out.
He also said that back in the 60s, that Nigeria used to top the charts in exporting agricultural commodities across the world and in Africa. What was it that we were doing so good then that we are not doing now? And how did we get to this stage? How did we depreciate to what we have now? What happened?
Well, then, the dependence on oil was very minimal. Then, the government of the day encouraged agriculture. There were extension officers, there were quarantine officers. Government has a structure that was working. Unlike now, when every aspect of our politics is destroyed, dismantled. Today, everybody wants to be governors, everybody wants to be president, everybody wants to be member of house because it's easier to get money. No youth. Look, How many youth do we have now learning any trade? None. You see them as Okada riders. You see them as doing Yahoo Yahoo. You see them as not going to the farm. You see them roaming the streets and looking for immediate business that can bring money. These are the trouble. Most of them are engaged as political talks. And this is why we need to redirect the orientation of these youths to what is going to be, in the long term, beneficial to everybody. The crime rate will reduce if we engage youths in agriculture. But we need to make agriculture very attractive to them. So those are the things. Then people could earn a living from agriculture. You can produce a ton of cocoa, you can sell, you have a lot of opportunities, competitive advantage over so many of the countries. But now we don't have. So when the other part of the world was developing and moving forward, Nigeria was stagnant. At one point, we started retrogressing, and that's what affected all the spheres of our life. So we just need a government that will put a stop to this, then start all over again and redirect our route, because we've lost it. It's painful, but that is the truth.
Earlier, you mentioned that agriculture should be made attractive to youth. How can we achieve this?
It's very easy. We need, one, to first let the youth know that agriculture can employ multitude of them, not the white-collar job. Fortunately for us, God did not make a mistake by creating us here. This is a place where our weather is very stable. The opportunity we have is in the land. You can plant cocoa. Look, in front of my office here, there's cocoa there. You can plant anywhere, it will fruit. It will germinate. It will bring very good fruit. So if they are encouraged, the land is not going to increase. The population of the world is increasing. In the next 20 years, 30 years, people will not depend on cash crop. People will depend on food crop, because people must eat. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we should put ourselves in advantageous position because of the demand for food, which Africa, Nigeria especially, is blessed with. Today, Nigeria has the largest uncultivated land in the entire West Africa, in the entire Africa. Good land, where so many of these products can germinate and work. So before we turn all of them into houses, we should take the advantage so that the youths, the children that are coming, the country will not be overpopulated. Unfortunately, today you see so many migration going to Europe. What job are they doing? They are looking for me. In fact, they've been selling them as slaves. We had that one in stories. So we need to redirect our orientation. That, look, it is better for us to, and the government should pay attention to it. Give them incentives, give them free seeds to plant. Create an opportunity whereby you take those seeds from them at a price, and the government will guarantee minimum price. There was a time the federal government under President Olusegun Obasanjo said we should go for cassava production. There was massive production of cassava. Then they did not follow through to create the starch factories where they can produce starch and export them to China. People produced in large volume and they could not sell. There was a glut. So people became discouraged and everybody left it. So these are type of programs that government should look at. Look at the entire value chain, and the government should invest in the critical side of it, from production to marketing to semi-processing to final product, and that is it.
Well, we've come to the end of today's edition of Money Matters. You can watch us again on our website at tv360nigeria.com and across all our social media platforms at TV360 Nigeria. Thank you very much for watching. I am Adeshewa Udushoga. Bye for now.